On the warm afternoon of June 12, 2025, Air India Flight 171, a state-of-the-art Boeing 787 Dreamliner, stood poised for departure at Ahmedabad's Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel International Airport. The aircraft gleamed under the midday sun, its engines silent but ready, as ground crews made their final preparations. 230 passengers, a mix of families, business travelers, and tourists, along with 30 dedicated crew members, boarded the plane. For most, it was just another flight, a routine journey to London's Gatwick Airport, filled with the usual excitement and anticipation of travel. Inside the cabin, a gentle buzz of conversation filled the air. Flight attendants moved efficiently down the aisles, helping passengers stow their bags and settle in. At the front, Captain Sumit Sabharwal and First Officer Clive Kunder, both seasoned aviators, reviewed their checklists with practiced precision, ensuring every detail was in order for the long-haul flight ahead. The Dreamliner's powerful engines roared to life, sending a subtle vibration through the fuselage. With clearance from air traffic control, the aircraft began its slow taxi to the runway, the anticipation inside the cabin growing with every passing moment. At precisely 13:38 local time, First Officer Kunder advanced the throttles. The Dreamliner surged forward, gathering speed as it raced down the runway. Passengers felt the familiar pressure against their seats, the world outside blurring as the aircraft reached takeoff velocity. With a graceful lift, the aircraft left the ground, climbing steadily into the sky. Ahmedabad's cityscape quickly shrank from view, replaced by endless blue and the promise of a smooth journey ahead. All systems indicated green. The climb was smooth and uneventful, with the pilots confidently monitoring their instruments. In the cabin, passengers began to relax, some opening books or adjusting their seats for the long flight. But as the Dreamliner continued its ascent, a subtle tension crept into the cockpit. The crew, always vigilant, kept a close eye on their instruments, unaware that the routine flight was about to take a dramatic turn. In a matter of seconds, the reassuring hum of the engines was shattered. Warning alarms blared through the cockpit, and chaos erupted as the crew scrambled to assess the situation. The calm of routine was instantly replaced by confusion and fear. The journey that had begun with such normalcy was now spiraling toward disaster. Passengers clung to their seats, and the crew worked desperately to regain control, but the situation was rapidly deteriorating, leaving behind a mystery that would haunt the aviation world. What should have been a routine departure was about to become a tragedy that no one on board or in the world of aviation could have ever predicted. Just moments after the wheels left the ground, 3 seconds into the climb, something unthinkable happened. Both engines on Flight 171 began to spool down, their powerful thrust fading away. The familiar roar of the engines, a constant companion to every flight, faded into an unnatural, chilling silence that filled the cabin and cockpit alike. Suddenly, the aircraft was transformed from a sophisticated jetliner into a massive, unpowered glider. At such a low altitude, with the ground rushing by below, the pilots had almost no margin for error. The controls grew heavy, the plane sluggish and difficult to maneuver. In the cockpit, warning alarms blared and lights flashed urgently. The pilots, trained for emergencies but rarely facing total engine failure at this critical phase, were thrust into a nightmare scenario, complete loss of thrust just seconds after takeoff. As the aircraft lost all primary electrical power, the ram air turbine automatically deployed, spinning in the airstream to provide emergency power. Its appearance confirmed the gravity of the situation. Both engines were out, and backup systems were now the only lifeline. The Dreamliner, heavy with fuel and passengers, managed to climb to just 625 feet above the ground before its momentum began to ebb, and the nose started to dip. Desperately, the pilots ran through emergency procedures, working together to attempt an engine restart. But the relight sequence, complex and time-consuming, required more altitude and time than they had. With precious seconds slipping away, a frantic mayday call was transmitted to air traffic control, the urgency in the pilot's voice unmistakable. The call was cut short as the aircraft began to descend rapidly, out of options and out of time. In less than a minute from takeoff, the fate of Flight 171 was sealed. The crew and passengers had only seconds to brace for impact. The silence that had haunted the sky was shattered in an instant, replaced by the deafening sound of impact, a tragic end to 60 seconds of unimaginable terror. Less than a minute after takeoff, Flight 171 crashed just 1,500 meters from the runway, plowing into a crowded neighborhood. The impact unleashed a massive fireball, fueled by thousands of kilograms of jet fuel. The devastation was immediate. No survivors among the 260 on board, and 19 more lives lost on the ground. Emergency crews battled the inferno, but the destruction was overwhelming. The crash sent shockwaves through the aviation world. This was the first fatal accident involving a Boeing 787 Dreamliner. How could a modern, well-maintained aircraft, flown by experienced pilots, fall from the sky moments after takeoff? As recovery began, investigators raced to find the black boxes, the only hope for answers. The world demanded to know, what went so catastrophically wrong? The recovery of the black boxes was a breakthrough. The cockpit voice recorder revealed a chilling exchange. One pilot asked, "Why did you do the cutoff?" The other replied, "I didn't do it." The flight data recorder confirmed both engines were shut down by moving the fuel control switches from run to cutoff, one after the other. 10 seconds later, the switches were returned to run, but it was too late for a restart. The preliminary report confirmed the cause. Both engines were shut down by the switches, but the reason, whether deliberate, accidental, or mechanical, remained a mystery. The cockpit recording provided the what, but not the why. Investigators were left with a puzzle that defied easy explanation. The world waited for answers that were nowhere in sight. Investigators focused their attention on the fuel control switches, lever lock mechanisms specifically engineered to prevent accidental activation. These switches are a critical part of the aircraft's safety systems, designed with multiple safeguards to ensure that only intentional, deliberate actions by the crew can move them. To operate these switches, a pilot must first pull up on the lever, overcoming a spring-loaded resistance, and then flip the switch down. This two-step process is intentionally awkward, making accidental activation highly unlikely, even in turbulent conditions or during high workload situations. In this case, both switches were moved within a second of each other, a sequence that would require two deliberate, coordinated actions. For a single person to do this by mistake, or for it to happen unintentionally, is considered nearly impossible by aviation experts. In 2018, the FAA issued a bulletin warning of a potential vulnerability in similar fuel control switches. The bulletin highlighted the importance of regular inspection and awareness, but it was non-mandatory and did not specifically address the Dreamliner's unique design. Investigators considered whether a technical fault or maintenance oversight could have caused the switches to move on their own. They meticulously reviewed maintenance records and interviewed engineers who had worked on the aircraft. The switches are purely mechanical, not electronic, relying on physical movement rather than software or electrical signals. No known failure mode, such as a jammed spring or worn component, could explain both switches moving in perfect sequence. Every possibility, no matter how remote or unlikely, was thoroughly investigated. The team even considered sabotage, human error, and rare environmental factors. Ironically, the very switches designed to enhance safety and prevent disaster had become the center of a baffling tragedy, raising more questions than answers. Was it a hidden design flaw, a freak accident, or something no one had ever anticipated? The mystery deepened with every new piece of evidence. The investigation pressed on, searching for any clue that could explain the impossible. For now, the answer remained elusive, leaving investigators and the aviation world searching for closure. The spotlight turned to Captain Sabarwal and First Officer Kunder. Both were experienced, respected, and had spotless records. Medical and psychological checks before the flight revealed nothing unusual. Their personal lives showed no signs of distress or motive for deliberate action. The cockpit exchange, one pilot's shock, the other's denial, suggested confusion, not conspiracy. There was no evidence of fatigue, illness, or error. The pilot's professionalism stood in stark contrast to the disaster. The mystery deepened. How could two exemplary aviators be at the center of such a catastrophe? The investigation found no answers in their backgrounds. The question of why only grew more urgent. The investigation explored every angled technical malfunction, pilot error, or deliberate act. Teams reconstructed the wreckage and analyzed flight data, searching for a trigger. Could a short circuit or system anomaly have caused the switches to move? Tests found no evidence. The 2018 FAA bulletin kept the possibility of a latent defect alive, but checks on other Dreamliners revealed nothing. Human factors were scrutinized. Could the switches have been moved by accident? The sequence made this unlikely. The official investigation was methodical, resisting speculation. No evidence of fuel contamination or engine defect was found. The world waited, but the investigation offered only silence and uncertainty. The mystery persisted, fueling public speculation. As investigators worked, media speculation exploded. Leaked transcripts fueled rumors, casting suspicion on the pilots and igniting controversy. Indian pilot unions condemned the leaks, demanding a fair investigation and decrying premature blame. Official agencies urged patience, warning against drawing conclusions. The facts were few. The engines were shut down by the switches, and the pilots were confused. Everything else was speculation. Was it error, sabotage, or a freak technical failure? The investigation's challenge was to separate fact from noise. More than a month later, the mystery of Flight 171 endures. The preliminary report explains what happened, but not why. Experts continue to analyze every detail, from switch mechanics to software. The final report is months, perhaps years away. The crash has prompted a re-examination of cockpit design and pilot-machine interaction. For the families of the 279 victims, the wait for answers is agonizing. Only a clear, evidence-based conclusion can bring closure. The wreckage stands as a somber reminder of aviation's vulnerabilities. The search for answers is driven by the promise that every tragedy must yield lessons. The skies are safer for every lesson learned, but the final chapter of Flight 171 remains unwritten. The world still waits for the truth.